There was a box on Alina Whitfield's mantel that no one in the family was allowed to touch, not dusted around, not moved for photographs, not opened, not once in 19 years, wrapped in paper that had gone soft and faded at the folds, tied with a ribbon that had lost its shine sometime during the Clinton administration. It sat between a clock that no longer kept time and a photograph of a woman nobody in the house ever mentioned by name. Alina's grandchildren grew up believing it was simply part of the furniture, the way old houses accumulate objects nobody explains. Until the day her 7-year-old granddaughter, home alone with her for an afternoon, climbed onto the good armchair to reach it, and Alina walked into the room just in time to watch her hands close around the ribbon. There is a particular kind of stillness that settles over a house that has been lived in by one person for a very long time. Not loneliness, exactly, but a quiet that has learned the shape of the rooms and stopped expecting anyone to disturb it. Alina Whitfield's house had that kind of stillness. She was 71 years old, a retired schoolteacher who had spent 34 years correcting other people's children's spelling, and had never quite lost the habit of noticing things precisely. She lived alone in the house she'd raised her own daughter in a town small enough that the woman at the post office still called her Mrs. Whitfield, the way she had in 1988. On the second Saturday of every month, her son-in-law dropped off her granddaughter, Ivy, for the afternoon while he and Alina's son ran errands that took longer than errands should. Ivy was 7, quick, and possessed of the particular fearless curiosity of a child who has not yet been told no often enough to believe it applies to her. She liked Alina's house because it was full of old things, and old things, to a 7-year-old, are simply unopened stories waiting to be asked about. That Saturday, Alina had gone to answer the phone in the kitchen, a call from the pharmacy about a prescription, nothing urgent, but the kind of call that takes 4 minutes and feels, at 71, like it takes considerably longer. When she came back into the living room, Ivy was standing on the good armchair, on her toes, one hand already closed around the faded ribbon on the mantel. "Ivy?" Alina's voice came out sharper than she meant it to, sharp enough that Ivy flinched and nearly lost her balance on the cushion. "I was just looking," Ivy said, climbing down fast, the ribbon still caught between two of her fingers, the box tilted half off the mantel. "You never open it. I wanted to see what's inside." "That box is not for opening," Alina said, and took it from her granddaughter's hands with a firmness that surprised them both, and set it back exactly where it had been, adjusting it a half-inch to the left the way she always did, though she'd never told anyone why the position mattered. Ivy sat back down on the arm of the chair, watching her grandmother with the particular patient stubbornness of a child who has decided a question is worth the risk of being told to drop it. "Why not?" she said. "It's just sitting there. Presents are supposed to be opened. That's the whole point of a present. If you never open it, it's not really a present anymore. It's just a box." Alina didn't answer right away. She smoothed the ribbon with 2 fingers, an old, unconscious gesture, the kind of thing hands do when they've done it 10,000 times before. "It was for someone," Alina said finally. "It's still for her." "Who?" Alina looked at the photograph beside the box, the one on the mantel that nobody in the house ever asked about. A woman in her 30s with Alina's same sharp chin, laughing at something outside the frame. "My daughter," Alina said. "Your Aunt Rosalind before your dad." Ivy's face did the particular scrunching thing children's faces do when they encounter a fact the adults around them had apparently agreed, without telling them, not to mention. "I didn't know Dad had a sister." "He doesn't talk about her much," Alina said. "Neither do I if I'm honest." "Why not?" And here, Alina Whitfield, who had spent 34 years being the person in the room with the answers, found that she did not have one ready. Not one she'd said out loud in 19 years at least. "Because I never gave her that," Alina said, nodding at the box. "And then I didn't have the chance to anymore. And it's easier not to talk about a thing than to explain why you missed your chance at it." Ivy considered this with the seriousness she brought to very few things, but brought fully when something in the room had gone quiet in a way that mattered. What happened to her? Eleanor sat down slowly in the good armchair, the one Ivy had just climbed off of, and for a long moment looked at nothing in particular. Rosalind and I had a fight, she said. A bad one. About nothing that matters now, about a boy she wanted to marry that I didn't think was right for her, which is the oldest, most foolish kind of fight a mother and daughter can have. And I knew it was foolish even while I was having it, and I had it anyway. She left angry. I bought that gift for her birthday 2 months later, thinking I'd give it to her when she came around, when we'd had time, when it would mean something instead of just being a white flag. I wrapped it up and I put it right there, and I told myself, next time she calls, I'll bring it to her. I'll say I'm sorry and I'll bring the gift, and it'll be a good day. Did she call? She called plenty of times, Eleanor said. I was the one who didn't pick up the way I should have. I let too many calls go a day longer than they needed to. I told myself there was always going to be a next call. That's the arithmetic you do without meaning to. There's always a next time until there isn't one, and you don't get any warning about which time was the last one. She died in a car accident 11 months after we fought. Icy Road, a Tuesday in February. I was going to bring her that box that weekend. I had already decided. The room had gone very quiet. Outside, a car passed on the street, its sound rising and falling and gone. So you kept it, Ivy said, very softly, in the voice of a child who has just understood something enormous and doesn't yet know where to put it. I kept it, Eleanor said. I told myself it was still for her, that if I never opened it, it meant the birthday hadn't really passed yet, that some part of the apology I owed her was still outstanding, still possible, as long as the box stayed wrapped. I know that isn't how time works. I taught schoolchildren for 34 years, and I know precisely how time works. But knowing a thing and being able to live inside that knowledge are not always the same. But Ivy climbed down off the arm of the chair and came and stood in front of her grandmother, small and very grave. But she knows you're sorry, Ivy said. Right, even if you didn't say it in time. I don't know that she does, Eleanor said. That's rather the trouble with the whole thing. I think, Ivy said with the plain, unfiltered confidence of a 7-year-old who has not yet learned that some truths are supposed to be softened before they're spoken aloud, that the present isn't really for her anymore. I think it's for you. And I think you're scared that if you open it, it means you have to stop being sorry. But you can open it and still be sorry. Those aren't different things. Eleanor looked at her granddaughter the way a person looks at a door they have stood in front of for 19 years, watching a 7-year-old reach past them and simply turn the handle. When did you get so wise? She said, and her voice had gone thin in a way it rarely did. I'm not wise, Ivy said. I just don't understand why grown-ups make things harder than they need to be. If you're sorry, you can just be sorry. You don't have to keep a box closed to prove it. Eleanor reached for the box. Her hands, which had smoothed that ribbon 1,000 times without ever pulling it loose, were not entirely steady now. Will you help me? She said. Ivy nodded and sat down beside her grandmother on the arm of the good chair, and together, slowly, they untied a ribbon that had waited 19 years to be untied. Inside the paper was a small wooden jewelry box, and inside that, a single strand of pearls, simple and old-fashioned, the kind of gift a mother buys a daughter when she is trying to say something she doesn't yet have the words for. Tucked beneath the pearls, folded twice, was a note in Eleanor's younger handwriting, the ink only slightly faded. Rosalind, I was wrong and I'm sorry, and I love you more than I know how to say out loud, which is probably why I'm saying it here instead. Happy birthday. Come home soon. Mom. Eleanor read it twice. Then she set it down on her knee and put both hands over her face, and Ivy, without being told to, without quite understanding everything that had just happened but understanding enough, put both arms around her grandmother's neck and held on. They sat like that for a long while. Outside, The street stayed quiet the way small-town streets do on a Saturday afternoon, indifferent to what happens inside the houses along it. "Can I ask you something else?" Ivy said eventually into her grandmother's shoulder. "Anything," Alina said. "Can we get a frame for the note, so it's not folded up in a box anymore, so people can see it?" Alina pulled back and looked at her granddaughter, and for the first time in 19 years, something in her chest that had been holding its breath let go of it. "Yes," she said, "I think we should." Closing till to 9:30. That evening, when Ivy's father came to collect her, he found the box open on the coffee table, the ribbon coiled loosely beside it. His mother and his daughter both a little red around the eyes and neither one explaining right away. It was Ivy, eventually, who told him, plainly, the way 7-year-olds tell things without cushioning, without knowing yet that some stories are supposed to be delivered gently. He sat down across from his mother, and, for the first time in 19 years, they talked about his sister for longer than the length of a single sentence. The following week, Alina bought a small frame from the shop on Main Street and put Rosalind's note inside it, and set it on the mantel where the wrapped box used to sit, not hidden, not wrapped, not waiting anymore, just there, the way a thing that has finally been allowed to be seen simply is. Perhaps that is the gentle truth tucked inside an ordinary Saturday like this one. That the apologies we owe the people we've lost don't disappear when we run out of time to give them in person. They just wait, sometimes for years, sometimes wrapped in paper on a mantel, for someone brave enough, or young enough, or honest enough to finally open them. And sometimes it takes a child's unfiltered question to show us that grief does not require us to keep every door closed in order to prove we still care about what's on the other side of it.